I'd like to welcome you all and also to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respect to the elders past and present and any elders with us here today. It's great to see so many people. It's fantastic. Without all of you, the foundation would be nothing. And I'd particularly like to welcome major donors, Mrs Anne Foote and also Paul Wilton, who we'll be hearing from soon. And I'd like to acknowledge our Chairman Daniel Layton and also the board members who are present, whose names I will read out because they're a very important part of the foundation, and there's Jane Peck, John Anderson, Craig Bell, Amanda Millage, Andrea Waters, Sandra Hacker, and also Mike Zafiropoulos and Dr George Tippett, who have just retired from the board after 11 years of service. And it's fantastic to have so many of you here. So I'd also actually like to thank those performers. The Emotion 21, that's the second time I've seen them recently. They are fantastic. And the other performers we've got later on are also all friends of the foundation and very inspiring young people. So my talk today, I wanted to focus on learning and what, as a foundation, we have been learning. And just to explain that alongside our 91-year heritage of fundraising and responsive granting, the foundation is now taking a proactive approach to addressing high-priority community issues and to finding opportunities to learn, collaborate and be more strategic in our granting and research. Philanthropic foundations, and especially community foundations like the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation, must respond to changing community needs if we are to remain relevant and maximise our impact. We must learn and adapt in a fast-changing world. I read this quote and I thought it was rather pertinent. It's by author Thomas Friedman. "A decade ago, Facebook didn't exist. Twitter was a sound. 4G was a parking space. Applications were what you sent to college. And Skype for most people was a typo." So that kind of says a lot in a few lines. And at the foundation, we have seen these changes in the projects that we're being asked to support. Applications for new software, hardware and other digital tools, projects that use social media to reach young people with health information, documentary films being used to educate the community about HIV/AIDS, youth mental health and preserving Indigenous cultural heritage, and many others actually in that area. The digital world changes the way people learn, the way services can be delivered and the way that information and ideas can be shared. And I have a particular request from Suzanne that you're all invited to tweet using hashtag it's /Inspiring Philanthropy, or hashtag Melbourne LMCF. So Suzanne will be thrilled if there's a few tweets. Yeah. This year, we, as already been said, we made grants of over $9 million across our grants program, ranging from supporting core operations to investing in innovative ideas. It's been a wonderful year of learning and doing for the foundation. And I just wanted to think about that role of philanthropy and the need to learn, and I just wanted to highlight 6 sources of information, I guess. One is that we're more and more using data on community needs to inform our priorities, and we worked with Community Indicators Victoria at the University of Melbourne to produce the first vital signs report, which will be launched in early December, and Melanie and Anita will be talking about that a little later. That's a real milestone for us. We also use Community Indicators Victoria data and other data to provide our grants panels with demographic information about what's happening to young people, older people and homelessness. So I think that was all very well received and did help inform some of the prioritising of granting. We've actually been founding supporters of ANDI, and I see some ANDI people here, the Australian National Development Index, which will measure our progress as a nation against other indicators in addition to GDP. And I'm very excited to know that Andy's in talks with the University of Melbourne and with ANU about hosting the project, so fingers crossed. We also learn from the outcomes of funded projects, especially projects that are funded in the Exploration and Innovation Grants programs. They're about investing in new ideas. Last week I attended the last session of a symposium run by Arts Access called Beyond Access, the creative case for inclusive arts practice. This was part of an exploration grant, and it included Caroline Bowditch, who's a UK-based artist, and Professor Gerard Goggin from the University of Sydney, and many, many people participating in accessible arts. And they were presented with 6 video case studies of inclusive arts companies, which were also produced as part of the project. There's a real lack of recorded evidence of the disability arts movement in Australia and its impact on the field. And in fact, this project, and even the fact that we're filming the performance of Emotion 21, is all part of actually documenting that important role. The key message from that symposium is that people with disabilities need role models who have made it in mainstream arts industry. To quote one participant, "If we don't see it, we don't know what is possible." And I think that probably relates to a lot of the areas we're working in. Another exploration grant was Homeground Real Estate Agency, which received funding of $50,000 to set up a new social enterprise. And this grant operates a not-for-profit real estate agency to manage residential properties on behalf of owners, commercial, investment and not-for-profit, and to lease to the general public and to people on low working incomes, as well as formerly homeless people. The exciting thing about this is that while it's providing a service, it's actually also funding some of their other homegrown services, which is helping their financial sustainability. And we're seeing more and more of these type of projects, which is exciting. A wonderful project is Food Skill, which was an innovation grant from 2013 to establish another social enterprise operating a shop in Nor Lane and also now a market garden. And they provide healthy, affordable food to a low-income community and also opportunities for training and work experience for young people. The program has really developed over the last year, and we heard in a couple of weeks ago that they're now providing certificates in retail and horticultural skills to the young people involved in the program. So that's just a brilliant extension. And Food School was one of the first organisations to win one of our funded places in the Crunch Social Enterprise Development Program with social traders. And we recently heard from their founder, Catherine Drummond-Gillett, who I think could grow anything anywhere. She's just got green thumbs, and she's got such a good commitment to giving young people and unemployed people new opportunities. So another source of fun, information and learning for us was our second grant applicant survey report, which is prepared by Swinburne University's Centre for Social Investment and Philanthropy, and I see Chris here somewhere. From this, we learned from the people who've applied for grants to us what they think and how the process has worked and how we can improve, and also a bit about the issues they're confronting. We learned that many long-standing non-profit organisations need funding support for operating costs to sustain the continuity of their services, and really, boring costs like public liability insurance and rent and things like that. And I would add, from what we know now, the tools for the digital age. And I would like to reassure people we will continue that arm of our funding, which is we tend to call Survive and Thrive, or capacity building. The other part we've learnt is from actually funding research through some of the grants. One was by Per Capita, who undertook a study on the Longevity and Positive Ageing project, which actually found that the current retirement income system is inadequate to meet the longevity challenge and makes some very interesting recommendations for policymakers. And we already know from the Productivity Commission's Deep and Persistent Disadvantage report that there are more than 500,000 women over 65 living in long-term poverty in Australia. So it's a really serious issue, which we're doing more work on. Another aspect to that was an innovation grant given recently to Swinburne to Dr. Andrea Sharman to look at life event threats to housing security in old age, which is connected to that issue. So we got onto the front foot with 3 pieces of research this year, which we were actively involved with. One was also relating to ageing, and it was in relation to culturally and linguistically diverse communities. And we had the great pleasure of working with adjunct Professor Susan Feldman, who's associated with Monash University, and her colleague Dr. Harriet Rademacher, to undertake research and then work with research officers from the Chinese, Greek and Italian communities, and I will name these people because they were funded as part of the project, and they've been, I see a couple there, they've been fantastic contributors. So from the Chinese Health Foundation it was Mei Yu and Cam Hin, from the Australian Greek Welfare Society was Kostas Tsingas, and from COASIT was Silvana Skro. And we're looking to see what we can do next with these findings, really. There was one piece of research in the Greek community, and a man was interviewed and he said, "I shun various activities and avoid ringing old friends and acquaintances or answering the phone because I am slow now and I'm afraid that I might not be able to carry out a full conversation in English. There is nothing worse than being unable to communicate. I now stay at home, away from friends and isolated." I think that says a lot, and experienced by many people for who English is not their first language. The other issues, some were surprising, but just a couple of others, was the grief felt by a lot of older Italians who left Italy for economic reasons in the 50s, but now lament the loss of their old culture and country, and a lot of family members were commenting on that additional grief that the older Italians are feeling. And then the Greeks and Italians, they didn't see their own parents ageing when they were living here. So they also find ageing especially challenging because they haven't got a direct experience of that. So that project alone has just revealed so many interesting things, and we're now going to talk to the organisations. We've got appointments organised to follow up what happens next. We also did an exciting piece of work with the Centre for Multicultural Youth and the University of Melbourne, looking at newly arrived refugee young people and their barriers to education and training. And they amounted to lack of networks, lack of awareness of the services available, interrupted schooling. So many of the young people who arrive as refugees have not had a schooling background like we have. They may have had a few years or not a lot, and very interrupted. So it's hard for them to suddenly catch up with their age group. A lot of them have family responsibilities and are affected by trauma. So there are many complicated issues. So we've actually funded a web-based solution to help find local services to the Centre for Multicultural Youth, and we're doing more work in that area. We also had Eddie Chisholm with us working on Indigenous philanthropy and how philanthropy can do a better job in that area. And we've become particularly interested, I think, in young people and their access to education and employment, and also community health. So we'll see what happens in 2015 on those. Another part of learning was actually bringing people together to share ideas, and I mentioned the Deep and Persistent Disadvantage report, which we held a briefing for philanthropy with Reichstein Foundation. We also helped bring Julia Unwin, the CEO of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, out, again with the Reichstein Foundation. And also Dame Julia Cleverdon, who's an advisor to Prince Charles and the former CEO of the UK Business in the Community, and that was done with the Australian Women Donors Network and Schools Connect Australia. Julia Unwin urged Melbourne Philanthropy to use its capacity to search, demonstrate and influence, and to be brave. She said, "Bring research and evidence to the table to help inform wider policy. Shine a light on social issues that are likely to lead to a breakdown of social cohesion and demonstrate solutions. We are committed to doing all of those." So the point of all this learning is that we can actually work out how we could make a breakthrough difference on some of the issues that the community cares about. The theme of learning and working together is also reflected in our philanthropic services over the last year. We received further distributions from the bequest from Eldon Foote, and this bequest, and we'll be seeing a short film soon, it is actually a game changer for the foundation and actually for community philanthropy in Australia. It's giving us a lot more capacity than we ever had. The fact that he divided the residue of his estate between the Edmonton Community Foundation and our own foundation is important. He understood the power of community philanthropy. This year we also supported Australian Community Philanthropy, the Australian Environmental Grantmakers Network and the Australian Women Donors Network, and I'd like to congratulate all of them on their contribution to growing a thoughtful philanthropy sector in Australia. Some exciting new friends joined us from giving circles. So Impact 100 joined us this year, and also the Melbourne Women's Fund was launched. both very exciting initiatives, and I think they'll both be presented with their certificates later. And of course, the Lady Mayoress Committee is, in a sense, a collective giving circle that started in 1959, and I recently went to their annual meeting and gave out some life memberships and awards, and there are quite a number of people who've been working on fundraising and philanthropy for more than 40 years. So it was wonderful to hear their stories of friendship and of giving back because of their successful lives. That's really quite fantastic, and the other great thing was there were 4 or 5 young women in the audience, so I could see sort of regeneration as well. So hopefully they'll be here well into sort of 2059. So finally, a couple more programs which are very dear to my heart. One is Feed Melbourne, which is a partnership with Leader Newspapers and FareShare. That had a fantastic year, and together we gave out more than $500,000 to food charities. We're actually continuing on with that project for another 3 years, and there's endless possibility in the food security area, we feel, for us to make a difference. Youth in Philanthropy had a really great year. They now have 21 schools and will continue to grow next year, and they've now got an alumni association who are going to develop some interesting projects for us to look at this year. So the need for foundations to learning and adapt to a changing community is captured in a recently released paper by the US Monitor Institute called What's Next for Community Philanthropy? And I thought I'd just read a quote. Each organisation will need to creatively reimagine how it provides value to the community, and then keep reimagining it, because the world isn't going to stop changing. And the community philanthropy organisations that truly flourish, whatever they may look like, will be the groups that can adapt and innovate regularly. That is our challenge, and we are up for it. I'd like to thank the staff team led by Darren McConnell, Anita Hopkins, Judy Buchan and Suzanne Doig. Suzanne's team has managed today, so well done Suzanne and team. And I'd like to thank the board and our pro bono advisors, particularly in the investment area, for their wise counsel and commitment over the past year. I have 3 concluding messages. First of all, the Foundation is listening and we will never stop learning. Secondly, we will achieve more working with others than by working alone. And finally, everyone can be a philanthropist. That is the point of difference of community philanthropy. Thank you. Thank you. I now have a great honour to just introduce the special film Inspiring Philanthropy, Eldon Foote, lawyer, businessman and philanthropist. Mr Foote is one of Australia's leading examples of philanthropy through his generous bequest. In the year 2000, Mr Foote and his wife, Mrs Anne Foote, who is with us here today, established the Eldon and Anne Foote Trust as a charitable fund with the Foundation. And in recent years, distributions from Mr Foote's estate have grown this gift to over $100 million. I'd like to particularly thank Mrs Foote for her participation in this film and for joining us today as we launch Inspiring Philanthropy, Eldon Foote, lawyer, businessman and philanthropist.